This is our first SPSS review video. We are going to review what we did last night in class, which was to explore SPSS, to run some descriptive statistics, frequencies, and to create basic graphs and charts that we can use to depict our data. So the first thing that we did was we looked, and I will throw out the caveat that this is a Mac, and I think most of you are working on a PC, so there are some small differences, such as here we see the data view and the variable view buttons are in the middle of the screen. We are currently on the variable view, and this is where we can see our variable names, the types, the width, the decimals, the label. And here's, I'm going to focus for 1 second by making it bigger so I can see the whole labels, the values, the missing values, columns, the alignment, and then the measure. So here's where you can see whether it is a nominal, ordinal, or scale variable. So we are going to start here by looking at the labels, and again, these describe what the variable actually is measuring. And for each of these, we have over here the values. And if we open up, again, I just clicked on the right side of that box, and it pops open a dialog box that tells me how each value for that variable is labeled. So in this case, this variable, whether the parent questionnaire respondent is parent 1, this is a nominal variable, and it's what we call dichotomous. It has two possible values, 0 or 1. Those are the values that we're really interested in. There are other kinds of values, which are the missing values. These are different kinds of missing data. These were created for us, but if we were creating our own data set, we would probably have to go in and decide, how do we want to label these variables? How do we want to label the numbers? So I'm now going to go into Analyze, and I'm going to go into Descriptive Statistics and across to Frequencies. And we are going to do a different score, a different variable than what we did last night. But I know, because I look at this ruler over here, I know that this variable is a numeric variable, and I can use this variable to pull some descriptive statistics by going over here to the statistics box, and I'm going to get the mean and the median and the mode, and those are our central tendency variable or descriptives. And then I'm going to get the max and the min and the variance and the standard deviation. And those are the dispersion measures. So those are how much variability is there in this variable, the values for that variable. I'm going to go ahead and ask for a histogram over which I will impose a normal curve. And I hit OK. And I'm going to uncheck this first. We don't need this for numeric variables, this display frequency variables. It's not a big deal. If you don't uncheck it, it'll just take up a lot of space in your output folder, your output screen. So here it comes. It's a little slow because this is a big data set. And what we see here, we have 2,444 valid responses, 2,059 missing responses. We see our mean and our median, and we see the mode, so that's again the one that appears the most frequently, and the mean is the arithmetic average, and this is the value that is smack dab in the middle. The standard deviation and the variance tell us about the variability around the mean. And the variance, remember, is that sum of squared deviations, the average sum of square deviations, and the standard deviation is the square root of that. You see the maximum score is 82 and the minimum score is 24. And when we look at our histogram, it gives us some of our basic descriptive information down here, and it superimposes this normal curve, and we see that actually these are really quite normally distributed, which is nice. And if we look at the graph, we see here that down here we have the scores. These are those standardized theta scores, and here we have the number of students who have each score. These are the frequency. Now I'm going to show you another way to get that same basic information. We can go to descriptives, and we pick our variable, and it was not the standard error, it was this, the standardized theta score. I'm going to go to options, and it's already pre-selected the mean, the standard deviation, the minimum, the maximum. I'm going to add the variance, and that'll be it. And this does not let us pick a chart. So just FYI, if you go to descriptives, within the descriptives option, you only get these parameters, and they're displayed somewhat differently. So same information displayed somewhat differently. The third way to get those descriptive statistics is to go to Explore. In Explore, we are going to select our variable, which is right here, put it in the dependent list. When we go to statistics, we have the basic, sort of the default statistics is already selected for us. And then we say, okay, these are the plots we want. And so that is good, and we hit OK. And it's going to give us both. And here they come. So there are those descriptive statistics. And remember, this option gives us more, gives us this thing we call a confidence interval around the mean. So we're 95% confidence that for this sample, the population mean is somewhere between 50.97 and 51.24. And this was our estimate for the mean. Remember, this is a sample, so we are just talking about estimates. It gives us the median, the variance, the standard deviation, the minimum, the maximum, the range, this middle 50% in terms of the distribution, so that's the interquartile range, and then, so that's the number of points that are in that 50% range. And then it gives us these two things that we saw last night and we didn't get into because we will next week. But basically, again, this is a measure of skewness and kurtosis, or a measure of how much does this distribution deviate from a normal curve. And in this case, we see it's really quite normal. And here's our box plot. And so here's that middle 50%. So they're really quite clustered around the mean is what we see here. And there's the there's the bottom and there's the top, and this is the median, I believe. So that's our numeric variable. Now we're going to go to a categorical variable, and for that we just are going to use frequencies. So we hit reset down here. And let's find a different variable than the one we used last night. So we can make this bigger and we can see. So let's look at parent highest level of education. And since this is a categorical variable, we're really actually only interested in the frequencies. So what number of people, of individuals, are in each of the categories in this variable? Another way to think about it is what percent of our sample, of the parents in the sample, are in each category of education. Now before I do this, I'm actually going to toggle back to the variable view so we can look at that variable really quickly for a second. So that is the highest level of education. So we see here that it's categorical, and we go here and we open it up and we can see these are the options. Right, so there's no parent in the household less than high school or GED, associates, bachelor's, master's, or PhD. So those are our options in addition to, of course, missing data. So let's go back and descriptives, frequencies, find that variable again. Highest level of education, move it over. Statistics, we don't need this. Charts, let's go ahead and ask for a bar chart. And we have our frequency table checked, so we hit OK. And here it tells us the frequency and the percent and the valid percent in each of these categories. So less than high school comprises 8% of the valid population. So when I say valid, that means these are calculated taking into consideration these missing data, which means that they're excluded from the calculation. And so whereas this percent adds up to 71% because 30% of the data are missing, almost 30% of the data are missing, this is going to add up, when we say total, to 100% because only the valid responses are taken into consideration. So this is usually what we use, the valid percent. So 8% have less than a high school diploma, 40.5% have a high school diploma or GED, 53 15.3% have an associate's degree, 23.2% have a bachelor's, 9.6% have a master's, and 3.4% have a PhD, MD, law, or other high-level professional degree. And then we can see that depicted down here, and that's our bar chart. And this shows, again, each category. See how they don't touch, unlike the histogram? And it just tells us the frequency, how many individuals, how many parents are in each category. And if we go back to Analyze, we can go to Frequencies, and we can select a different chart. And here I'm going to say I don't need those frequency tables again. I just want my chart. And there it is. It tells you what they are, and if you want to edit this, you can double click and it'll opened it on my other screen. And what we'll do is we'll go to edit. Down here to edit, we'll right click on this and we can add titles. We can add a text box. We can make changes to it. So it's really pretty useful if you want to later use this in a report or something. All right, so with that, I will stop. That's a basic review of what we covered the first night we worked with SPSS.